Okay, well, hello and welcome everyone to Engage's quarterly leadership lab. I am Michelle Alexandrowitz, psychologist and founder of Engage, and your host for today. We are so glad that you're here. This is our Q4 lab. I can't believe it's the last quarter of the year, but we're here. We made it, and I am so glad that you're here to join us for this lab today. We have a ton in store for you in our lab today. So I'm glad you're here. And to those that are here live, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. And for those that are going to be listening later, hello, we see you as well. So we host these labs every quarter, always on the 15th of the first month of each quarter. So that means January, April, July, and October 15th is when we host our labs. And what is lab? Lab is education. Lab is a chance to give leaders like you a moment to pause, reflect, grow. We are all learning together, and we cannot grow without new learning. So we build these labs based on our work with all of you. Many of you are clients. This lab is for past, current, and future clients of Engage. So a lot of the content that we build in here comes directly from all of you. The projects, the challenges, the issues that we're all struggling with, we take that working content and then we put it into building these labs. So these labs are based on you in a lot of ways. So who are we? Allow me to introduce ourselves. We are Engage. We use psychological science to solve business problems. So I, along with other psychologists in lots of different disciplines of psychology, we build programming and we help our clients in three main ways. The first main way is through coaching. The second is through education or training, and the third is through data tools. So we are certified partners with Predictive Index, with DISC, and because we're psychologists, we have a lot of other data tools that we're able to use and support you with. Engagement tools, burnout tools, culture assessments, things like that. So in a way, we're kind of like private practice, but for leaders. So we're here to provide good psychological science. Our goal is to put good psychological science into the hands of leaders to help us all lead better. So what can we expect from today's lab? Let's do the run through. So first and foremost, you can expect community. We say all the time at Engage that leadership should not be done in isolation. Leadership is hard, it's difficult, and the point of this lab is to bring other leaders together so that we can see and learn what other people in the industry are doing. We ask you questions, we ask for your feedback. This is a chance for you to step outside of the day-to-day and to kind of look around and see what other leaders are doing, and we share that knowledge here. So the second goal and purpose of this meeting is for new learning. We take a lot of work and pride in curating really helpful and scientifically sound research for you leaders to be able to utilize and have. So we bring that research together. It's always based on psychology or psychology adjacent, and we bring that new learning to you. We bring it to our clients that we work with, but we also bring it here in the labs to all of you so that nobody misses out. And then the last point or goal of the lab or of this meeting today is partnership. We want to support you. We want to work with you. And these labs are often a place where we explore new topics and we try new things and we kind of share with our clients, past and future, what's working and what's not. And together we're figuring out how this leadership thing works. Okay, so thank you again for being here today. And the best way to engage, if you want to keep your cameras on, we'd love to see your beautiful faces. If you want to keep the cameras off, that's perfectly fine. But we encourage all of you to show up in the chat. So if you see that little blue triangle, you'll see stuff throughout the lab. And when you see that blue triangle, it means we're asking for some feedback in the lab. So if you haven't already, open up your chat, say hello, welcome someone else, and let's begin. Okay, so before we get to the content, I want to give a few couple of announcements to just kind of let you know what's going on. And the first thing we're really excited to share is that we have launched a new website. So Elizabeth Miller, for those of you that don't know, she is our lab manager. If you can give us a wave. She helps with a lot of the coordination behind the scenes, and she also manages the lab too. So hop in the chat if you have a question for her. She's there to support. So she's going to drop the link to the website, to our new website in the chat. We also have a QR code. Also look it up, engageyourpeople.org. It's always being tweaked and adjusted and worked on, but it's in a decent shape now. So we hope you check it out and see some of the work that we're doing. Another quick announcement we wanted to acknowledge is I'm having a hard time admitting it, but we're at the end of 2025. And we wanted to take a moment and just acknowledge some of the clients and partners that we've worked with. There's many more that are not included here, but we just wanted to say thank you for working together. We learned a lot. And we also wanted to say our 2026 calendar is open. So we are having conversations now until the end of the year, talking to people that are interested in coaching to get you up and running by January, some education. And if I can share one of the things, this has been a challenge, generally speaking. One of the things we're learning, we've had multiple conversations with leaders, and a lot of times we spend all this time like working on this perfect leadership program. And long story short, it never gets launched. And it's happened a handful of times, and it's never personal and it's never anything negative. It's just kind of how things happen. But one of the things that we're learning is do one quarterly training a year. So we're starting to offer an annual training calendar with one training per quarter. And the idea is just start something, do something, put something on the books, invite everyone. It doesn't just have to be for your executive leaders. We work with a lot of clients that are trying to put leadership programs on for their top leaders. And of course, that's fine. But we're also realizing there's a lot of employees that are missing out on training that would really love and benefit to participate in this. So that's one of the things we learned from 2025 that we're starting to implement in 2026. Give us a call. Elizabeth, if you can drop our booking link in the chat. If you are interested in having a conversation around providing coaching for your employees next year, education or training, let's have that conversation now. And the one other thing I'll say is we have one spot left in 2025. If anyone's interested in a leadership coaching, or if anyone's interested in a virtual training or live training if you're local to Fort Lauderdale. So we have one slot left before the end of the year. If that's something of interest to you, performance reviews are coming up. We have a great performance workshop. We're running some burnout workshops right now to close out the end of the year so people start out strong in January. So if that's something of interest too, we want to work with you. We want to support you. So thank you for a great 2025. We will be back again with labs in 2026, but just wanted to say thank you. Okay, so with that, let's get to the good stuff. So what we have for you today is a ton of great content talking about decision making. Now, before I invite Elizabeth Terrace, our guest speaker, to the stage, I wanted to give us a little bit of a cognitive warm up. Now, some of you on this call might have seen this before. So if you have, please keep thoughts and comments to yourself and allow everyone else to experience it. But this is a great phenomenon that has to do with the brain. It's going to give you instructions. And what I want you to do is follow the instructions. There's going to be 6 players, 3 with a white shirt, 3 with a black shirt, and they're going to be passing basketballs back and forth to each other. What I want you to do is watch the white t-shirts. How many times do they pass the ball? And then we'll see what happens. So let's give this a shot.
The monkey business illusion.
Can you hear?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion.
And that's the monkey business illusion. So I'm curious if you want to show up in the chat. Who saw the gorilla? Who saw the curtain change? Who saw the extra player? Have you experienced this before? Have you seen it before? This is a great cognitive exercise. And the reason I love it so much is because the first time I saw this, I 100% did not see the gorilla. Like, not even a little bit, not even like a thought crossed my mind about it. So forget the curtains and the player aspect. And I love showing this activity because this is such a good reflection of how the brain works. You were asked to focus on a difficult moving task. So when your brain focused in tight on that, it took everything else out of its purview. So when we think about decision making, when we're focused on a decision, cognitively what is happening to our brains is we're over focusing on one thing and the brain makes everything else go away. So that is why it is important to understand how the brain works. That is something that helps us make better decisions. So to help us understand this concept, I have invited Elizabeth Terrace to the table today, and I am really excited to introduce all of you to Elizabeth. She is a cognitive psychologist. She's head of product at Immersion Neuroscience. And Elizabeth and I met 10 years ago or something like that. And I met Elizabeth when we were both working at the neuroeconomics lab. She was the lab manager, and I was one of the lower people helping run the labs and the experiments and things like that. So that's where our career paths crossed. But Elizabeth, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So can you start us out with, can you explain to us, I had mentioned the Neuroeconomics Center and that research. Can you explain just a little bit what it is and where you're coming from and how it's
Sure.
connected? Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. So, as we were both getting our graduate degrees, we both worked at this place called the Center for Neuroeconomic Studies. And it basically ran studies that looked at sort of economic decision making, and but put a sort of spin lens on it, right? So, we used a lot of neuroscience, a lot of cognitive psychology. There were people from many different backgrounds, which was really awesome. So you got to learn a lot. But most of the focus of the stuff that I worked on was really around decision making and that economic decision making, and how people's bodies reacted while they were watching content or trying to make a decision as to whether or not to buy something, what kind of candy to choose, what kind of snacks to choose, those types of things. So a lot of times we showed them some sort of content and then had them sort of make a choice, and then looked at those physiological reactions to see if we could basically predict the choice that they would make. So some of those we used in order to look at sales. My dissertation revolved around using people's physiological responses to predict how, while they were watching a movie trailer, to predict how well that movie trailer actually did in market. So we're able to use group physiology in order to predict market outcomes. A huge sort of thing, right? You don't have to ask for people's feedback because, sometimes you always get the pleasant feedback, and nobody likes to say the negative stuff. Or total opposite. You never get the middle, right? You never get the middle ground of it. And you can also look at the highlights and the lowlights because you're looking at physiological reactions. You can see second by second what how people are reacting, and therefore you don't just get this yes no response or a maybe response. You can see the whole thing and sort of, if you were doing a movie trailer, you could rejig the whole movie trailer or something along those lines. So that was where I was really focused on when we were at the Center for Neuroeconomic Studies.
Awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite studies and probably the most famous that came out of that was the Super Bowl study that was run every year. So what they
Yeah.
would do is they would run the top 10 ads from the Super Bowl and you would rank them. So you would choose which one is your favorite, but then you would compare the ones you chose to your biological response. And it turns out your body responds differently than your mind does. So there was always an interesting, this was the chosen top one, but physiologically speaking, this was the top one. So yeah, Elizabeth, you've done a ton of cool experiments. So we're going to bring that into the conversation today around decision making, right? So with that, let's talk about, oh, forgive me. Actually, before we do that, The reason why we did this lab, let me go back there. If you were with us in Q2 in April, we ran a lab called Leading at Speed, key leadership competencies in PE owned companies. And overwhelmingly, the poll results to the question of what competency do you believe is required to lead at speed, the number one response was overwhelmingly decision making and judgment. And that does not minimize or discount the other ones, but this one rose to the top so quickly. So that's why we put this together. Okay. So as soon as that lab happened, I called Elizabeth and I was like, I got something for you. I was like, we got to put this together. So we asked you again in our poll, and I think it's worth noting when we give you these polls and ask you these questions, let's talk about for a second who's in the room. We're not doing a random Google survey. We're not going up to people on the street and asking this. We're asking top leaders. So we're asking executive directors, CEOs, C-suite. We have the finance industry in here, the marina industry in here, private equity is in here, maritime, power gen. We have a lot of leaders that are in like boots on the ground doing this work. So when we talk about this data, it's important to understand this is also a reflection of the leadership community. So we asked you this time, what kinds of decisions are you making? And none of this should come as any surprise to you. Overwhelming, a lot of you said delegation and performance, so performance reviews or giving difficult feedback. Many of you said something about employee culture, engagement, policy and contracts, promotion. And I have to take a moment and highlight some of the miscellaneous ones that came out here because it was so interesting. And the first one that came out said, ha ha ha, too many to recall. And I thought that was so spot on because who can't relate to that? We're all kind of drowning in decision making, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The other one, though, that was also interesting said, I decided not to step into a minor conflict. So that means decision making also doesn't necessarily mean action. Sometimes decision making means not doing an action and holding back. And I thought that was interesting. And then the last one I had to highlight was just out of left field. We had someone say, well, I agreed to an emergency C-section to avoid complications with my newborn. And yeah, just to bring it full circle, we're making decisions about our families when we're at work. We're constantly balancing decision making of, do I focus on work? Do I focus on family? And those, two are often at odds with each other. So these are the kind of decisions that we're making. And I want to encourage you to hold these in your mind as we go through, because when this call's over, you're probably going to have to go and make a decision somewhere. So hold this stuff as we continue. And I want to ask Elizabeth again. So walk us through, what is cognitive science? Why does it matter for leaders? And how can it help us with decision making?
Definitely. So cognitive science is really an umbrella. There's lots of different sectors to it. But it's really about, how people are thinking, they're perceiving, they're making decisions, remembering, learning, and behaving. Cognitive science really draws upon psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy, computer science, and a whole bunch of different fields, right? So we're really looking at how and why people are making decisions, the behaviors that they have, and how can we predict them? How can we make sure that we're making good choices? Things along those lines. So it's kind of important to remember that with the cognitive science, you're not just making this decision currently that's in the moment, but you're basing it based off of your memories, what you're currently attending to, your current physiological state, the emotions that you have running, right? So there's so much that goes into that decision, even if it is, what do I have for breakfast? Even that decision has all of these things melded into it, right? So why do we care? You guys are making decisions all the time. We all are, right? We have lots of decisions to make. A lot of them are really high stakes. You don't have a lot of time. You're kind of relying on your instincts or incomplete data, right? You don't have all the data. We can never get all of the data. And you're trying to make those decisions fast, and you want to make the best decision that you can in the moment that you're at. So we kind of want to take this and look at ways to sort of help you make those decisions in the best way that you can show up for the current moment and the current decisions that you're making. So
Brilliant.
kind of building a framework for yourself.
Excellent. Yep. Well said. So memory, attention, emotion, like there's a lot of things happening. So Elizabeth, walk us through, and if you see the blue little triangle here, pop in the chat, and we want to know from you what kills decision making, because the list is endless, right? And there's really no wrong answer. And this might be a chance for us to be a little, I'm not saying like personal, but like something that might kill decision making for me might not for someone else. But take a minute and think about it. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth to walk us through and ask her as a cognitive scientist. So, what kills decision making?
Yeah. So I think most of us have always heard, make sure you're getting enough sleep, which is laughable. Make sure you're eating correctly. Again, laughable. Make sure you're taking those mental breaks and doing things that you enjoy, right? Again, all the things that you would love to be able to do if you had the time to do them. But we also want to make sure that we're giving ourselves that sort of ability to hold things in memory that we need to hold, find the patterns that we need to find, and make sure that we are observing the environment around us, looking at our behavior, looking at others' behavior, to make sure that we are making the best decision that we can. So, besides getting enough sleep and eating enough and all of that good stuff, there are other ways that you can sort of help your decision making capacity, making sure that you aren't moving too fast. Sometimes I loved that quote of like, I didn't do anything. I just didn't. Sometimes we move so fast that we just are reacting so quickly and we don't take the time to just take a breath and then make a decision because other things may come to mind. And sometimes, when those kids are fighting and you don't actually intervene with the kids fighting, they might actually solve that problem on their own, and it's one less thing for you to do. So sometimes inaction is something that can be helpful in certain situations, obviously. But yeah, moving too fast can also be another thing. Making sure that you aren't just doing the gut instinct, but you are also um, looking at all the factors. And there are lots of different biases, which I think we'll go into, and lots of things that can influence your decision making besides the basic biological needs.
Yeah, Elizabeth and I spent a lot of time talking about this one slide because basically we got to a place where we were talking about like this is the state of reality, right? Like we all have limited mental capacity. I think a couple of you said that in the chats, overwhelm and stress. Like this is the reality that we live in. We live in a world that is moving insanely fast, fast goals, like everything's got to be within 90 days. And I think it's worth taking a breath and kind of level setting and understand that without anything that you or I have done, we are in an environment that's already against decision making. Does that make sense? Like the nature of speed and overwhelm and stress and all of those things, it already puts us at a disadvantage for the ability to make poor decisions. And I don't say that to discourage. I say that to say like let's look at reality and understand, because when you understand and accept reality, then you're able to make better decisions. And like Elizabeth said, beyond that, it comes to cognitive traps or cognitive biases, right? So there's just some tricks of the brain. You just experienced it with the gorilla effect, right? So what we want to do is let's unpack what is a cognitive trap, what's a cognitive bias. So Elizabeth, help us understand. By the way, you should not be able to read everything on this slide. Absolutely not possible. Do not try. But Elizabeth Miller, if you can drop the link in the chat, we're going to share a link with you that has the entire codex and you can like zoom and move and look at it. But we just want to give you a high level. So Elizabeth Terrace, can you help us? Cognitive bias codex, like what is that? Help me out.
Definitely. Yeah. So this is a list of over 180 different cognitive biases that you are up against as you're making a decision. And this isn't, again, as Michelle said, not to discourage you, just the reality of the situation that you are in as you're making decisions. And we develop these sort of biases because they're mental shortcuts. They're easy ways for you to make decisions that, on the whole, typically work, right? So as you make decisions, so when you go to the store to buy some milk, you probably buy the same brand, the same size, all of right? You just grab the one and you go. You don't look at the price typically, maybe nowadays you might, but that may or may not influence whether or not you buy that brand of milk. Those are biases. That is a cognitive shortcut that you take so that you don't have to stand there and look at all the different types of milk and compare all the different prices and then make your decision. Because why? That's going to take way too long. You don't have that kind of time to do that for every single thing that you buy in the store. So these are biases that do help us. However, there are some traps that these put us into where we may be making less optimal decisions than what we would just knowing that these biases exist, right? You don't have to know the full strength of them or exactly what they are, but knowing that they exist and that you could fall into them is sometimes good enough for you to take a second just breather to make sure that you have as much information as you can to make a better decision.
Yeah, I really like how you reminded me in that moment that, like, no, this is helpful for us. Like, we do need these biases because otherwise we'd be stuck in the cereal aisle for the rest of our
Oh
lives.
my God,
So
we would never, you'd never make a decision. In fact, like one of my favorite biases is, you're driving home from work and you literally get in your car and you drive straight home. And then you get home and you go, crap, I had errands I was supposed to run that I totally forgot about. And had you gotten into your car and you made it a routine to just say, is there anything I was supposed to do after work today? You might have actually remembered all the errands that you were supposed to run instead of just mindlessly autopilot driving home.
that was a great example. And that sets us up great because what we're going to do is we're going to take you through. We have 4 biases. If we have time, we'll go through all of them. If not, they will land in your inbox on Friday. But the point is, like, before you make a decision at work, ask yourself a couple of things and then move forward. So brilliant. Okay, so let's start with some of the most common biases that leaders experience. So, Elizabeth, walk us through what is it? What are some things we need to look out for? And then how do we overcome it?
Sure. So confirmation bias. So this is one that all of us fall into. We sort of look at information that we already know and we kind of disclude or don't take into any evidence or things that may be against what we already know or what we've already kind of decided. So you're biasing yourself towards information that confirms your belief, right? And not taking in any information that may disconfirm that belief. So for an example, a lot of people, working hard gets you everywhere. So you put in the 80 hours a week, right, to work hard, drive success, and you're only looking at those things that back that up. You're not looking at the burnout that you're having. You're not looking at all the decisions that may have gone not so great because you're overworking yourself. You sort of ignore all the feedback or even research out there that says, overworking yourself can really harm you, not just in making decisions, but also physically. You can physically make yourself sick working too much. We know this. We've seen people who this has happened to.
Yeah, some of these people are
So
on that call. Mhm.
So, we want to make sure that we aren't just confirming our own beliefs, that we are sort of making sure that we're looking at sort of what I call kind of a dissent, right? What is the opposite of what I am currently making or what I currently believe? How can I incorporate that information? Is there new information for me to sort of incorporate? Um, so some of this happens a lot within a company culture, right? We tend to have this like sort of group think, like everybody thinks the same thing. Like, oh yeah, that's a great thing. Let's do X, Y, and Z instead of asking for dissent, looking at what might happen if this goes wrong, right? So looking for the opposite to disconfirm our belief. And sometimes being able to like, okay, yes, if it goes wrong, it's not going to go that wrong. So let's move forward with what we're currently on our current path. But sometimes it can go horribly wrong. And if you stop to think just for a second of like, if I make this decision, what is the worst that can happen and you think about the worst, ooh, and then you might try to make a different decision, right? So being aware, so, how do we overcome this? Just being aware that it's a trap that you can fall into is, again, the first step. Um, Making sure you're getting diverse information, and you're doing that sort of what perimortem type thing. If this falls flat, what can I do? Or what will this outcome be? Can just be enough. And you don't have to take a long time to think about it. Even asking a colleague, like, hey, if I made this decision today, what do you think the outcome would be later? Just getting a little bit of feedback. But you don't even have to do that. Just stop and think for a moment. Is there anything that would disconfirm what I currently am doing or what I'm going forward in this choice?
Excellent. Yeah, the way I've seen this show up in some teams is they'll assign one team member to disagree with everything. And sometimes you don't even need to assign that person. Sometimes that person is naturally in the
That person
team,
already
right?
exists. Yeah.
But there's a place for that, right? Like we
Yeah.
can't live there forever, but that's an example of somewhere where I've seen it. So excellent examples. So this one's gonna hurt. This one's gonna hurt everyone. But Elizabeth, walk us through decision fatigue bias.
Okay, so I think we all fall into this category, right? Where
Mhm.
you are making so many decisions so fast. You spend all day trying to resolve issues. The end of the day comes and you are rushing to make decisions because those decisions, as we all know, were supposed to be made yesterday, and now you're having to make them today, right? We're going through all of these decisions. And so you end up having this fatigue where you make worse decisions as time goes on because you've already made so many decisions. How many of you have come home at night and you have to think of dinner and you're like, I can't make another decision. I don't want to. I don't even know what to have for dinner. I can't. And then you just grab something really quickly, right? That's a decision that you made and it's because of all the decisions that you had to make during the day that you just don't have the time for. You don't have the mental capacity for. Um, so what can we do in these situations? In order to reduce the amount of decisions that you are making, there are certain habits that you can do or certain um, habits that you can form in order to reduce decisions. So, reducing the number of choices. So, if you already know, like, I have 4 choices here, definitely this one's not going to happen, and this one's not going to happen. So, I actually only have 2 things to choose from. And then you look at those 2 decisions and it's like, what is the worst of each of them? Is it really that like worth going through the weight of all of that? Just choose one and go, right? So if you can eliminate decisions and then look through the decisions that or the choices that you do have, and if there's like one's not super better than the other, you can then just quickly flip a coin, make a decision really quickly, and go through that. Other things that you can do are make things that are a routine. Eat the same breakfast. We all know, there are many leaders out there that show up in the same outfit every day. Why do they do that? One less decision to make. They don't have to choose their outfit. They just have it in their closet. They put on the same thing. It's one less decision that they have to make. If you can add these things to your repertoire, even if it's you get the same drink every morning, do the same things at the same time, right? Those are just one less thing that you have to decide on, and it can sort of reduce some of this decision fatigue.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm learning how to put in like some habits and systems to be able to help with that. That's why people have the same lunch every day. Like that was a great example. I wanted to point out a couple of places that I see this pop up a lot within our clients and within our community is the priority of saying yes or no just to move on. And a lot of times I see it on the no end, which I get it. I get it. I get it. But when our default is to just say no to everything, like that's where the decision fatigue like really starts to stall us. Some things to consider. I think she mentioned it. I'm going to say it again. Think about putting your decisions at the beginning of the day. Like there should be no decisions made after 3 p.m. or whatever metric, makes sense for you. I know one of the things I started doing was putting time aside on my calendar where I have no meetings and my job is to sit and think about the decisions that I have to make for that week. And like, I try to make them in that quiet, moment without, a lot of instruction or distractions. So what are those things for you? Because decisions will eat your energy for breakfast all day, every day, right? And tired leaders make safe choices. They don't make smart choices, and they make choices that are going to be safest for them, right? So remember when Elizabeth talked about like our emotions and our experiences drive a lot of our decisions. Well, when we're tired, we're going to make decisions based on us and not necessarily the world at large. All right, we've got a couple more. I think we have some time to move through it. So loss aversion bias, this is when people feel the pain of loss more than they feel the positivity of the gain. So I'm more motivated to stay where I am versus wanting to grow into something new. We see this a lot with our private equity clients because there is a very real grief. I'm going to say that again. There's grief that comes with change. And if I have been doing the same thing for 12, 15, 20 years, and now there's change happening, I am going to psychologically, cognitively hang on to this stuff. So these are the problems. This is where it shows up at work. Are you using the new system? No, I'm using the old system. Are you under the new policy? No, I'm still, working my way around, that policy. And this is normal. So breathe through it. This is psychology happening in action. So one of the things to think about how to avoid some of this is to name the loss. Like put into words what the thing is that you're hanging on to, that loss aversion bias, because you can't move through that change if you can't speak to it. So the challenge is, how do you speak to that in like a kind and helpful and patient way? Because, psychologically we change and move at the pace that we do. We can't necessarily make ourselves go faster, but you got to put words to it. Another one is create rituals of transition. And I really like that one because change and decisions are often like abstract and not very grounded in reality in terms of like tangibility. So, for example, many of you probably do this already, but when someone's leaving an organization, you have a goodbye lunch, right? Like you have a lunch or an event that kind of marks the end of this person's, journey with this company. But there's other ways that you can do it, right? Like, a beginning lunch. This is the first time that we're doing something, under this new model or in this new way. There can be different events or activities that happen within the organization that have meaning. So we can talk more specifically about what that means for you, but generally you want to think about like, what are some things that you can do collectively like to move through or acknowledge that loss. So
Uh,
Elizabeth, did you have anything that you wanted to add to loss aversion
Yeah, so
bias?
I'm going to
Please.
add a little bit
Yes.
on loss aversion actually has a biological, physiological effect to you. So you have more of a physiological response to a loss than you do a gain, right? Happiness is kind of short-lived, unfortunately. But the loss sort of sticks with you, right? So making sure that you are speaking to it. It's really sad that, or I really miss this, or this, is a new process for me, right? Sort of helps you kind of work through that and work through those feelings and emotions that you're having towards this. So those are really good ways to sort of overcome this and sort of release that tension that you're holding in your body.
Brilliant. Thank you. And this is why we invited you to the table. Okay, last one, and we're going to do this one pretty short because we're starting to come up on time here. So bandwagon bias, Elizabeth, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, so that was good connection. This is the tendency to follow what others are doing simply because it's popular. It's the pull to align to the majority. Again, non-work related, the number one place this shows up is when you go to a restaurant And then the first person, what do you want to drink? I'll have a Coke. What do you want to drink? I'll have a Coke. And then before you know it, like every single person has ordered a Coke and you're like, I didn't even want a Coke, but I ordered it because everyone else before me did it as well. Like you can feel that tension or energy. So this happens all the time at work as well. So where this comes up is with leadership teams agreeing too quickly in meetings in order to maintain or preserve harmony or even speed. So remember at the beginning, we're already up against that bias to action, move, 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 let's go, let's go, let's go. Well, that can trigger the bandwagon effect and be like, well, like, then I guess whatever the leader wants or whatever the CEO wants or whoever's leading that particular, task. So change initiatives too, moving too fast because, everyone's doing it. And that's also the loss aversion bias. So how do we overcome this? Decide individually before group discussions. The leader or the CEO or whoever, is going to make the decision should speak last because it gives other people a chance to think and make decisions. And then practice and review conflict skills, especially at the executive level, because at the executive level, executive team engagement is all about conflict. You all have different goals, you all have different areas of the company that you are responsible for, so it creates this very natural tension, but through that tension is how you get good decisions, is how you get good results, right? So part of the bandwagon bias is having the psychological safety to be able to say no, and then have the conflict skills to be able to talk through that. So Elizabeth, anything you want to add? Anything to add to the bandwagon?
I'm going to highlight that psychological safety piece that you talked
Okay,
about,
please,
right?
thank you.
So if you want people not to bandwagon again with decisions, having the room to be able to say, I don't know if I totally agree with that. That is having a psychologically safe environment for someone to dissent, to say, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. So being able to put that into your team is one, kind of hard. It's a totally a culture thing, but two, super important, right? It'll help us with not doing the bandwagon, making sure that we're not just confirming our own beliefs, all of these things. It gives us just that little bit of, and even if it is, I don't agree with that, here's my thing, and then you say, I can totally understand that, and then move on with the decision that you currently were because, and you can give reasons X, Y, and Z, right, as to why we're moving forward this way. It just gives you that ability to sort of disengage and make sure that you're making the best decision. Even if you somebody comes in with a dissent, it doesn't necessarily mean that the decision you're making is wrong, but it also gives you more information to just take in to make sure that you are making that correct decision.
Excellent. Very good. So to, kind of close and wrap things up, so we kind of went through some biases. What's the next thing that you can start to do based on this content? And the best thing you can do is evaluate your decisions. Think about the past decisions, policy, performance, employee engagement, everything we talked about in the beginning, and reflect and think about how you did. So don't just make decisions, study them. Reflection turns instinct into insight. So when you evaluate your decisions, check the process, not just the outcome. So whether the outcome was good or bad, look at how you got to that decision and evaluate that part. Look for biases, look for traps that you may have fallen into, build a feedback loop. Elizabeth said it several times. I'm going to say it again. Look for people to disagree with you. Look for sources that are going to counter you. And this is going to help you with your decision making. And at the very least, ask yourself, if I had to make that decision all over again, what would I do differently? All right. And based on that, what would you tell yourself or remind yourself the next time you have to make a decision? So what we've done for you is we've created a 5-point kind of like checklist. It's obviously there's 180 biases. Okay, so we don't have 180 checklist for you. But generally speaking, before you make a decision, ask yourself, am I clear-headed or am I emotional? And if you're emotional, probably not going to make a great decision. Am I sharp enough to make this decision right now? How much sleep did I get last night? When was the last time I ate? Number 3, what assumption am I running on? So what do you believe to be true? Have I actually verified it? We feel it so deep in our souls, and then we find something to disprove it. So invite that process and look for it. Ask yourself, who or what am I not seeing? This is classic in organizations, right? Oh, we're going to buy a new system. Did anyone tell IT? Nope, no one included IT on that. So ask yourself, who or what am I not seeing? And ask yourself, am I choosing what's easy or am I choosing what's right? And that one, I think, speaks to the heart of the work of leaders. It is up to us as leaders to sometimes make tough choices and to not make a decision just because it's easy, but because it's actually right or it's the logical answer or whatever it may be. So this is a quick checklist to help you move through that. We will send everything to you on Friday in a full email with all of these slides and resources. But to sum everything up and to start to wrap this conversation up, I want to remind all of you that bias is not about being irrational. It's about being human. This is how our brains work. This is how our brains function. Great leaders can't eliminate bias. That's not possible. But we can design systems and habits that help reduce its impact. So like Elizabeth said, before you go home and turn the key on in the car, ask yourself, do I have to pick anyone up? Do I have to go anywhere? Those little moments before we make decisions or before we move into an action are the opportunities to make good decisions. So remember, the brain is not logical. The more you understand the brain, the better decisions you will make. Evaluate your decisions regularly. It's the only thing that will make you better. And remember, you are an elite athlete. So we often compare leadership to that of being an athlete. And the higher up you go in leadership, the more elite you are as an athlete. So you need to train and educate and take care of yourself at the capacity of which you are leading, which to all of you in this room is a lot. Because I know all of you. You're all going through a lot. Okay? So with that, Elizabeth Miller, give us 60 seconds on the clock, please. And we are going to take 60 seconds to kind of debrief from this conversation and start to transition into our day. So open up the chat. What did you learn today? Or more importantly, what do you want to remember? Because your brain will 100% forget this. But if you write it down, it becomes a seed. And that seed has the potential. So not all seeds will grow into, the biggest, baddest tree, but you'll have no trees if you have no seedlings. So take 60 seconds. You've got 30 seconds left. What is something that you learned today? All right, good. So thank you for taking those few seconds to take a minute. So now let's start to transition back into your day. You have about 10 minutes and everyone thinks you're in this meeting, okay? So take the next 10 minutes, go for a walk, get some sunshine on your face, maybe sit quietly and meditate, drink a glass of water. You're probably dehydrated, stretch and move, all right? Because in about 10 minutes, odds are you're gonna have to make a decision, okay? So with that, we have tons of resources coming your way. We're going to send you a whole packet on Friday with links and podcasts and the slides. But Elizabeth Miller, if you could drop the links in the chat now, if any of you are really excited and can't wait until Friday, we've got some links for you now. And to close everything out, we just want to say we will be back again in 2026. So we will be back the 15th of the first month of every quarter. And if you're willing, we're very open to hear your feedback, topics, thoughts, what works, what doesn't work. This lab is for you. So if it's not working, we are going to build, adapt, and change it to fit your needs. So with that, thank you so much for a 2025 year of labs. We will be back next year with more content every quarter on the 15th of the first month. Thank you for participating. Go make great decisions, do the work of leaders, and as always, go birds. Bye, everyone.